I'm Dana Linett, president of and founder of Evolutionary Energy Solutions here in Del Mar. And basically what we do is we save energy on what is the greatest single energy suck on any campus, on any big building. You're all feeling nice and comfortable right now. That's because it's nice and cool in here, and the air conditioning systems are that greatest suck of energy that is in any large building. And what we have been able to do is go in where there are large industrial chillers, the biggest, the most onerous industrial size for gigantic buildings that there are. And in a retrofit situation, because we'll deal with the buildings that we've just been hearing about that are basically 20 years old, 30 years old, that have these chiller systems that are very, very inefficient, and retrofit them where we're able to save an extraordinary amount of energy by adapting them with what we call an interface system, which overrides what the original equipment manufacturers have in place. And we add, if there's not one already, a variable frequency, some people call it a variable speed drive, and that allows the energy consumption to be flowed a little bit better and harmonically in tune with the chiller. But then we add something special. We add additional sensors on different parts of the chiller operation so we could see more than were originally on how it's operating than the original equipment manufacturers had provided. And with some really inventive algorithms and proprietary systems that we've incorporated, we're able to make that chiller operate much more smart and to be able to bring the amount of energy that is being consumed by that chiller down significantly. There are two types of air conditioning periods. One's called a peak period, and that's where it's extraordinarily hot outside, and so the air conditioning chillers have to work at full-blown speed to try to take as much of the heat out of the water that is flowing through them and to provide the cooling that's necessary. And even at those peak times, we're able to reduce the amount of energy needed for these giant motors run on these machines by approximately 25%. What's interesting, and it kind of contrary to what you would think, as the temperatures cool off during the springtime, during the fall, and especially during the winter time, the water that's running through the chillers to cool are basically lowered. It's not 126 degrees outside. It may be 60 degrees outside. And our system actually works better when that occurs. And throughout the year, we have an intelligent algorithm system that automatically changes as the temperature of the climate changes, and it learns where the very lowest amount of energy to make the chiller run as efficiently as humanly or technically possible will allow it to save as much energy as possible and thus as much dollars for the user as possible. We have a tremendous situation where there are, as you've heard, so many buildings, although only a small number of them are of the size and magnitude that would have these type of giant industrial chillers. And the size of this is, like a small locomotive almost. So they have what's called chiller plants. So if there are several buildings connected to, say, this building here, you may have several of these chillers operating in a chiller plant so that it distributes the air conditioning as needed by demand to all the different buildings depending upon the occupancy, the use. And another nice function about how our system operates is the more you need and run your chillers, if you're doing it 24/7, let's say you're a hospital or a casino, you're open all the time. You need the air conditioning constantly. And that is the best use. The more that your chillers are running, the more you save. It's a very simple equation. This is a typical large building. This is a profile you're all probably familiar with to some degree regarding how energy is used in a building. And as you could see on the left side, the chillers and HVAC equipment basically are about 45% of all the energy used in a large building. And the chillers themselves, just those giant locomotive-type devices, are using about 30% of all that energy. Well, our system alone saves about, on average, over an annualized basis in the course of a year, about 35% of the energy used just on those chillers. So if you do the math, that means that if you have a campus or a large building and you have government mandates that you have to meet, we could immediately allow you to start saving 10% of the entire building's electricity. So whatever your bill is for the year, about 10% could be mitigated by the use of our device if you have the right chillers. And they're a type that's called a centrifugal chiller. So how do we do this? Well, we have some interesting ways of going about hooking up and overriding the original equipment manufacturer's controls. And what you see is a picture of a very large variable frequency drive. These are big pieces of equipment. And all that is doing is basically allowing the high voltage energy that runs these giant motors to take the device, and I guess you could call it almost transforming an older vehicle into a Tesla-like vehicle. All of a sudden, when you put your foot on the accelerator, it runs very efficiently and very smooth. So that's what we're doing. On a single chiller, where we have it operating for over a year now, under the greatest of stress conditions at the Paris Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, on one chiller that they've made their lead chiller, annualized at 10 cents a kilowatt hour, so factor that for whatever you're paying for electricity. They're saving $1,000 a day, $365,000 a year on one chiller. There's a tremendous opportunity for retrofits across the United States, never mind the world. There's at least $5 billion of annual savings that could be done and accomplished by simply getting this retrofit into place as quickly as possible in as many major facilities as possible. The payback is extraordinary. That's not even including any rebates from utilities or government or write-offs from your taxes for the purpose of installing. So overall, 35% better energy efficiency. We're mitigating peak demand charges, and we are helping the world as quickly as possible on reducing the number of greenhouse gases that are being emitted by the generation of the electricity needed to run these motors. At Paris alone, that's 2,800 tons of carbon emissions that we equate are being saved on an annualized basis. So imagine that being widely installed across all the buildings that could utilize this solution. The billions of dollars that could be saved, the quick return on investment, this is a no-brainer. And we hope that with the organization and your assistance and knowledge that we'll be able to deploy soon and quickly. Thank you very much.